American farmers are halting production not because of drought, not because of lack of funding, but because of an invisible crisis tightening its grip on every acre of farmland across the country. They can't even repair their own equipment. A simple $60 malfunction is locked behind proprietary software, forcing them to pay thousands to authorized dealers for something they used to fix themselves. Now internal documents have leaked. John Deere's stock is tumbling, and a quiet resistance movement is spreading not just across America, but around the world. This isn't just a strike, it's a wake-up call about food sovereignty and a warning sign that the entire future of agriculture is at risk. Watch until the end to understand why this farming shutdown could change everything from the food on your table to the balance of the global supply chain. If you're drawn to topics like this, drop a comment below. I'm ready, are you? Let's dive in. The rising fury of American farmers and the John Deere backlash. A wave of outrage is sweeping across the heartland of America. And it's not about the weather unstable markets or rising interest rates. It's about something deeper, a growing sense of betrayal. Betrayed by the very name that once stood as a proud symbol of farming in America, John Deere. That anger exploded when President Trump took the stage before hundreds of farmers in Pennsylvania. Standing in front of those familiar green tractors, he didn't hold back. No diplomatic language, no corporate appeasement, just a bold, direct warning.
I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
It wasn't just a campaign soundbite, it was the first shot in what would become a historic chain reaction within American agriculture. But the discontent had been simmering for years. Across the country, farmers have long felt trapped, suffocated by a system that seems more rigid, more unjust with each passing season. John Deere, once the champion of farming technology, has morphed into something else entirely, a gatekeeper of control. They don't just sell equipment anymore, they lock it down. And they don't just offer repair services, they've made it so farmers are completely dependent on them. A $60 hydraulic sensor malfunction can now cripple an entire harvest, because the diagnostic tools and software needed to fix it are encrypted and off limits to the very people who own the machines. And the only solution, call a certified Deere technician. Wait days, sometimes weeks. Pay for travel installation and an unlock code. All of this just to use a tractor you already bought but no longer truly own. When these revelations spread, frustration turned into action. Leaked internal documents later confirmed the worst fears: the locking systems weren't an accident, they were part of a deliberate strategy. And when John Deere announced its plan to shift production to Mexico to cut costs and boost profits, it was the last straw. For many farmers, this wasn't just a business decision, it was betrayal. While they drown in debt choke on rising fuel costs and wait helplessly for repairs, they watch the company they trusted pack up and ship jobs overseas. In places like Kansas, Nebraska, and Minnesota, the backlash began. Farmers stopped buying new machines. Some canceled pending orders. Others paused production altogether, sending a clear message. If John Deere won't stand with farmers, then farmers won't stand with John Deere. Farm-focused social media erupted. Forums like Right to Farm Green Machine Trap and Farmer Hack exploded with traffic. Videos of farmers smashing tractors, blocking dealership gates, and flying upside-down flags over their fields went viral. Some are calling it the silent rebellion, not violent, but organized, calculated, and growing by the hour. And it's all unfolding as planting season approaches. Every hour of delay means lost yields, lost income, and a supply chain on the brink. But farmers aren't backing down, because this time they're not just fighting for fair prices. They're fighting to reclaim control over the very tools they rely on to feed the nation. Against this backdrop, Trump's declaration wasn't just politics. It was the first public stand by someone at the highest level of power willing to take on a corporation that holds the keys to modern agriculture. And whether you love or hate him, one thing is undeniable. His warning sparked a reaction the industry has never seen before. Borders tightened. Equipment was stopped at customs. And then, unexpectedly, a foreign ally made its move. But that's a story for the next chapter, because what's quietly unfolding across that border may reveal a counterattack more than a decade in the making. The silent blockade. Mexico strikes back. Harvests paralyzed. There were no gunshots, no declaration of war. But just days after Trump's bold warning, two critical trade arteries between the US and Mexico, the Laredo and Nogales border crossings, came to a sudden grinding halt. More than 140 John Deere tractors, harvesters, and agricultural machines were held at the border. No clearance papers, no clear explanation. The official reason: enhanced safety inspections for agricultural equipment. But everyone knew this wasn't about safety. It was a calculated move. Precise, targeted, strategic. Only John Deere was stopped. Meanwhile, competitors like Case IH and Kubota rolled through without issue as if given a quiet green light. It was a silent blockade, but time for maximum disruption. In just a few weeks, northern Mexico was set to begin peak planting season, a vital region supplying produce both domestically and to U.S. markets. In Sinaloa, Mexico's heartland for tomatoes and peppers, farmer Eduardo Vasquez stood helpless, staring at 5,000 acres of idle farmland. His high-tech harvester, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and fully paid for, sat just 30 feet away on the U.S. side of the border, untouchable. No paperwork could bring it through. And worse, no one could say when or even if it would be released. Back at John Deere's headquarters in Iowa and Illinois, panic was spreading. Containers were returned, orders delayed. Logistics teams scrambled for answers, but the Mexican authorities kept repeating the same vague phrases, reevaluating equipment protocols, additional inspection phases, digital compliance upgrades. In truth, this was no bureaucratic hiccup. It was a political counterstrike carefully planned. And Mexico, long seen as the weaker side in U.S. trade relations, had picked its moment. Over the past 5 years, more than 300 small farms across rural Mexico had gone under. The cause: John Deere repair costs were sky high and wait times unbearable. In some cases, farmers hauled broken machines over 120 miles just to unlock a single software error, the kind of fix they could have handled themselves in 10 minutes had they been given access. And for less than the cost of lunch. This anger wasn't just personal, it had fermented into political pressure. And when John Deere announced plans to shift part of its production to Mexico to cut costs, Mexican officials made a move no one saw coming. They turned the border into a bargaining chip, a soft weapon with real consequences. That quiet blockade sent shockwaves through the agricultural supply chain. Nearly 1 million acres in Mexico couldn't be planted on time. Equipment stuck in limbo. Fertilizer piled up in warehouses. Winter crop schedules collapsed. In just a few days, futures contracts for tomatoes, avocados, and peppers skyrocketed. Back in the U.S., the primary importer alarm bells were ringing. Food processing giants began noticing supply gaps. Raw ingredients were drying up. But this wasn't just a supply crisis. This was an unofficial negotiation. And somehow Mexico, the underdog, had seized the upper hand. They didn't issue an outright ban, just enough red tape to bring everything to a halt. No formal demands were made. But media leaks began surfacing demands for legal right to repair for farmers, a compensation fund for economic damages, partial software access, and regulatory control over replacement parts pricing. By now, one thing was clear: this wasn't just about John Deere anymore. This was the opening shot in a broader reshaping of global agricultural power. It didn't come through executive orders or flashy press conferences. It came in the form of bare fields, stalled machines at border checkpoints, and farmers standing in silence, powerless. Inside, John Deere emergency meetings became routine. The company's Latin America director was rushed to Laredo, but it was too late. The signal had been sent. The market understood. Farmers understood. Most importantly, competitors understood. A massive vulnerability in John Deere's business model had been exposed. And while the company scrambled to deal with the external blockade, a second quieter wave had begun to rise, not from abroad, but from within America's own farming heartland. The injustice of farmers, being denied the right to repair the machines they paid for. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a tractor, but when it breaks down, they're not allowed to fix it. Not because they lack the skills, not because they don't have the parts or the tools, but because the machine is locked down by software, and the only key belongs to John Deere. This is the reality for millions of American farmers, and it's no longer just a technical issue. It's a crisis of control where working people are stripped of the right to repair the very tools they depend on for their livelihood. Inside John Deere's design, every component from the engine and transmission to the GPS and hydraulic sensors is trapped behind a digital wall. When something fails, the machine doesn't just stop, it shuts down completely. Even if a farmer knows exactly what to do, has the parts, and understands the system inside and out, they still can't fix it because they're locked out of the diagnostic software. A simple error, a $60 hydraulic sensor, can require unlocking through proprietary software that only an authorized dealer technician is allowed to use. Each time that happens, the bill can run into the thousands. This isn't a fluke, it's a strategy. Leaked internal documents confirm that John Deere intentionally designed the system this way. One file, bluntly titled "Revenue Growth Through Repair Restrictions," makes it clear every error, every lockout is seen as a profit opportunity. The machines aren't built for performance, they're built to protect profit margins. Former Deere engineers have come forward revealing that certain sensors costing just $60 were deliberately programmed to shut down the entire system, when they failed, forcing users to call a dealer for a reset. One farmer was charged $500 just to clear a diagnostic code, a 5-minute task. No repairs were done, just the push of a button. And if that failure happens during harvest or right before fertilizing season, the consequences go far beyond money lost yields, canceled contracts, and ruined seasons. What infuriates people isn't just the cost, it's the feeling of being stripped of their agency. Farmers who've always been resourceful, self-reliant, and skilled with machines are now treated like helpless bystanders. They paid for the machine, but they don't really own it. They've become permanent digital subscribers to something they supposedly purchased. And when frustration crossed a threshold, it turned into action. More than 72 farmers in Minnesota, North Dakota, and Kansas filed a class action lawsuit accusing John Deere of violating antitrust laws by locking out independent repair shops and forcing customers through their authorized service toll booth. In the lawsuit, they called it technological tying, a kind of forced subscription hardwired into physical equipment. But not everyone chose the courtroom too slow, too expensive, too uncertain. Most farmers chose a different path, organize, and fight back with tech. They found each other online. Repair forums exploded. Secret Discord servers popped up. Terms like error code, jailbreak, green ghost patch, and software bypass started spreading fast. Then came Green Ghost, a program created by an anonymous engineer. With just a laptop, a few cables, and this software, any farmer could wipe error codes, install new parts, and bring their tractor back to life. No John Deere technician needed. This wasn't just underground tinkering. It became a digital rebellion. An entire shadow ecosystem emerged, ex-Deere employees quietly leaking documents, parts suppliers bypassing official dealers, firmware hacking guides shared like survival manuals. Some forums saw their member count triple in 6 weeks, and it wasn't just Americans. Farmers from Mexico, Canada, Australia, Brazil, all asking the same question: why can't I fix what I own? What began as a technical issue is now a battle of ideas between freedom and control. Farmers no longer see themselves as customers. They feel like hostages in a system designed to extract from them, not serve them, and once they realize that they choose to resist, not with violence, but with knowledge, with technology, and with the belief that autonomy is a right. But as this resistance spreads, the impact is no longer limited to a few farms. It shakes the foundation of a once legendary brand. And what happens when farmers turn their backs? Dealers switch sides and the stock price plummets. The answer is unfolding now as John Deere faces a world where it no longer holds the monopoly and competitors are stepping in. The collapse of trust. When the leaks began, the mask fell. Some crises come from the outside, but others begin with fractures deep inside the system itself. And for John Deere, the downfall didn't come from the Mexican border or a class action lawsuit. It all started with something seemingly harmless, a Dropbox file. Just days after a wave of protests erupted among farmers across the US and Mexico, an anonymous link quietly appeared across digital forums from Reddit to Discord. Inside that link were 64 pages of confidential documents bearing a jarring title: Revenue Enhancement Through Service Exclusivity. Within hours, the content was circulating among tech experts, farmers, journalists, and market analysts who all called it by one chilling name: the death evidence. The document dated back to a 2017 executive meeting at John Deere headquarters, laid out a calculated strategy to monopolize the repair process of agricultural machinery, not for safety, not for quality, but purely to maximize profit through control of software parts and access. Each slide revealed a new link in a chain designed to lock in the user diagnostic codes that couldn't be deleted, software errors triggered at critical times, and repair unlocks that could only be done by authorized dealers. They even had a term for it: margin expansion through seasonal stress, meaning if a machine failed in May, the farmer would be forced to pay before June or risk losing the entire harvest. One internal email stated it outright: this is the perfect time to tighten the screws. They have no other choice. Even a basic $60 thermal sensor was programmed to trigger a system-wide fault, effectively shutting down the entire machine. No on-site fixes, no third-party access. Everything had to go through a licensed maintenance center. But the biggest shock wasn't the technology. It was how the leadership viewed farmers, not as partners, but as a revenue stream, seasonal, predictable, and ripe for extraction, like squeezing a lemon at just the right time. The documents used disturbingly cold language: forced service, profit from downtime, and detailed charts estimating how much crop loss a farmer would suffer if repair access was delayed. When the documents went public, farmer outrage turned into something deeper: betrayal. "We used to think of John Deere as a partner," wrote one Kansas farmer. "Turns out we were just another target in a digital blood-sucking scheme." Mainstream media quickly picked up the story. CNBC, Reuters, and Bloomberg ran headline features. Industry analysts described John Deere's model as digital monopoly through platform lock-in, and warned that if left unchecked, it could spread to industries like electric vehicles, medical devices, and even aviation. But the damage wasn't just reputational. John Deere stock plunged 27% in just 5 days, wiping out over $14 billion in market capitalization. Credit agencies like Moody's and S&P immediately put John Deere on negative watch, warning that a business model reliant on exclusive servicing posed serious moral and political risks. Short-term profits could be high, but once exposed, the fallout would be explosive. And that prediction came true. Over 37 authorized John Deere dealerships across the U.S. began negotiations to switch to rival brands like Case IH, New Holland, and Mahindra. Some signed MOUs, others pulled all John Deere inventory from their showrooms. The iconic green and yellow signage began to come down. John Deere's biggest institutional client, the Nebraska Agricultural Cooperative Alliance, which manages over $40 million in annual purchasing, released a blunt statement: "We only work with those who truly support farmers." And that message echoed across the country like a warning bell. This wasn't just market backlash, this was a grassroots boycott from the ground up. A brand once proudly worn on hats, stitched into jackets and painted on barn walls, now stood for manipulation. And when the American farmer loses faith in a symbol, there's nothing left holding them back. But they didn't walk away alone. They took their communities, their dealerships, even their industries with them. And as everything began to fall apart, John Deere's competitors, long watching from the shadows, stepped boldly into the spotlight. Crisis of trust, stock plummets, corporate exodus begins. Once hailed as the most trusted name in modern agriculture, John Deere is now the brand making Wall Street nervous. When internal documents leaked, protests erupted, and the Mexican border was locked down, investors were forced to confront a chilling reality. The legendary green machine was no longer a golden goose. It was a ticking time bomb. On Monday morning, John Deere stock opened without incident. By noon, the sell-off had begun. Within just 4 days, the stock DE lost over 27% of its value, wiping out more than $14 billion in market capitalization. The worst crash in the company's 185-year history. There was no emergency press release, no word from the executives, just a deafening silence and a spreading fear. But the market wasn't reacting to rumors, it was reacting to a deeper truth. The problem was real, and it was structural. John Deere's business model, once admired, wasn't built around machines. It was built around aftermarket repair fees. Each tractor wasn't just a product, it was a long-term subscription hidden under layers of green and yellow paint. It only took one border closure in Mexico to paralyze the supply chain, and a wave of farmers refusing to pay unlock fees to crash the entire service infrastructure. A leaked Moody's report revealed a stunning fact: over 2/3 of John Deere's annual net profits came not from selling new equipment, but from maintenance services and replacement parts. Once that trust collapsed, the entire foundation crumbled like dominoes. Major institutional investors, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, all of whom held large stakes in John Deere, began dumping shares. No buybacks. No signs of confidence. According to Bloomberg analysts, investor faith wasn't tied to technology anymore. It was tied to the honesty of the business model. When Deere's internal strategy of maximizing seasonal stress was exposed, the company was officially labeled a high ethical risk. Liquidity issues began to spill into the bond market. Moody's downgraded several Deere bonds from stable to negative. Borrowing costs skyrocketed. The company is now bleeding over $370 million a week just to stay operational. Juggling excess inventory delayed shipments and mounting penalties for breached contracts. But that's only the surface. The deeper threat lies in the mass exodus of distributors and key corporate clients. In Nebraska, the state's largest agricultural cooperative canceled over $40 million in orders, switching instead to Case IH, with a new contract offering unlimited repair rights. In Iowa, once considered John Deere's holy land, more than 37 retailers pulled their signs down, terminating dealership agreements. One dealer told reporters, "We can't sell a brand our customers no longer trust." Agricultural boards in Minnesota, Kansas, and Texas followed suit, issuing advisories to transition away from equipment brands that restrict independent repairs. Some even released farmer-friendly dealer lists, and John Deere was nowhere to be found. But the heaviest blow came from the American Farm Bureau Federation, AFBF, representing over 6 million U.S. farming families. In a rare and sharply critical statement, the AFBF called for nationwide right-to-repair legislation and praised Mexico's crackdown as an international example of farmer protection. That message caught fire, spreading rapidly across borders. Dealers in Canada, Australia, and India started asking the same question: is John Deere still a trustworthy partner? Meanwhile, rivals saw an opportunity and seized it. Mahindra, the Indian tractor giant, announced plans to expand its U.S. dealer network by 40% within 6 months, launching a bold new policy: half the cost, full ownership rights. Case IH rolled out its open farming initiative, pledging no software locks, unrestricted repairs, and massive discounts for co-ops exiting Deere contracts. Their stocks surged, Kubota rose 11%, while CNH Industrial Case IH's parent jumped 16% in just 1 week. Investors saw the writing on the wall. Where John Deere falls, new markets rise. And just as John Deere scrambled to contain the PR disaster, a second, more silent rebellion began brewing, not from corporations or governments, but from the very people who once stood by the green and yellow flag, a new generation of farmers rising quietly with keyboards and cracked software, not slogans. The farmers' revolt from hackers to a movement of survival. They didn't march in the streets, no protest signs, no angry slogans, but they rose up in a way no tech corporation ever saw coming, armed with laptops, cracked software, and an online brotherhood. As John Deere's stock plummeted, dealers pulled back, and official associations issued boycott statements. Something far more powerful was taking root in the shadows, from the remote farmlands of Kansas and Iowa to the sun-scorched fields of Sinaloa and Chihuahua. A quiet revolution was igniting in the hearts of farmers. It all started with desperation, a machine failure that couldn't be fixed, a tractor frozen in the middle of fertilizing season, a phone call to the dealership that no one answered, a $500 bill to clear a 5-minute error code. Then came the question, why can't I fix the machine I own? That single question sparked the birth of a movement. At first it was just scattered forum posts, DIY repair guides, videos showing how to cool sensors or replace parts manually. But within 6 weeks, groups like FarmFix, Green Code Underground, and Way to Discord saw their membership surge by over 300%. At the center of it all was a legendary figure in the underground world of farm tech hackers, Green Ghost. No one knows who Green Ghost is. Some say he's a former John Deere software engineer. Others claim it's a Ukrainian tech collective. But their work speaks for itself, an untraceable software patch capable of unlocking John Deere's entire machinery control system. With just a laptop and a few simple commands, farmers could erase error codes, install third-party parts, activate diagnostic tools, and most importantly, run the machines they own without waiting for anyone's permission. Green Ghost didn't sell the patch, they gave it away. It spread like wildfire across digital communities. Farmers passed it around like a lifeline. One user wrote, "I've never felt more free than the moment I hit enter and my tractor restarted without calling the dealer." When a company abuses digital control, the natural response is a digital resistance. And that's exactly what formed. Former John Deere employees began leaking original firmware. Independent parts makers opened dark web storefronts. So-called agri-black markets emerged, places where farmers could buy unlock tools, wiring kits, leaked schematics, and even hire remote hackers through VPN to bypass the software locks. And it wasn't just Americans. Farmers from Mexico, Brazil, Canada, Ukraine, and Thailand joined the forums united by one goal: to reclaim the right to repair, to reclaim the right to survive, and remarkably, nobody saw them as criminals. No one could condemn a farmer trying to save their harvest, their family, from a cold, monopolistic digital system. That moral clarity gave the movement its strength. It wasn't sabotage, it was a declaration. Liberated harvesters were proudly marked with a sticker, "Hacked but honest." Farmers who once kept silent now posted full tutorials of their hacks. Their videos hit millions of views, sparking a new generation of digitally literate farmers, those who could code, who could program, and who refused to be controlled. The media called them farm hackers. But they weren't destroying anything. They were dismantling boundaries that should never have existed in the first place. Tech experts compared the movement to the early days of open source. Legal experts were baffled. There was no precedent for prosecuting a farmer for unlocking a machine he legally owns. John Deere said nothing. They didn't dare. Any legal move would only make them look worse. So they stayed quiet, no rebuttals, no lawsuits, just a slow, silent erosion of market share. Meanwhile, competitors saw an opportunity. Case I had launched open source tractors. Kubota opened independent repair training centers. Mahindra started giving programming kits to new buyers. They weren't just selling machines, they were selling independence. Some US states like Nebraska, Colorado, and Vermont have started drafting right-to-repair legislation, giving users full access to fix any agricultural device, even if the software is locked by the manufacturer. Never before has a digital revolution risen from the soil and gone this far. And no one expected that when farmers started writing code, an entire industry would begin to tremble. But the wave isn't over. Because once the tech is cracked, the market destabilized, and control reversed on the other side of the border in Mexico, something even more disruptive is coming. A full-blown legal offensive aimed straight at the heart of John Deere's business model. What we've just witnessed may be one of the quietest yet most dangerous crises in modern history. It all began with a locked tractor, but what started as a software issue has ignited a global rebellion from the farms of the American Midwest. to the border towns of Mexico, from underground hacker forums to the boardrooms of Wall Street, from struggling farmers to billion-dollar tech giants. The battle over control of farm equipment has laid bare a fundamental question of our time: who truly owns the tools we rely on to survive? John Deere is no longer just a brand. It has become a symbol, a warning for every tech corporation out there, and a wake-up call for anyone living in a world ruled by proprietary code and digital gatekeeping. When trust collapses, people don't stay silent. They rise not with weapons, but with knowledge, with community, and with the unwavering belief that the right to repair is the right to freedom. And you, the one watching this video, chances are you're using devices you think you own, but in truth, you don't. So where do you stand? Will you remain dependent, or will you start asking questions and take back what's rightfully yours? If you made it this far, drop a comment saying, "I watched to the end." And if you have a different take, whether you agree or disagree, don't hold back. Share it, because the more voices we hear, the fewer people will be blinded by shiny promises that hide deeper truths.